eliminator match of the Indian Premier League 2024. Royal Challengers Bengaluru faced off against Rajasthan Royals last night. Rajasthan clinched a spectacular victory by 4 wickets, advancing to the qualifier 2 to play against Sunrisers Hyderabad. After winning the toss and opting to bowl first in Ahmedabad, Rajasthan restricted Bengaluru to 172 runs for the loss of 8 wickets in 20 overs, despite Virat Kohli's effort of 33 runs of 24 deliveries, which saw him becoming the first batsman to score 8,000 runs in IPL history. Bengaluru's total wasn't enough. In response to Rajasthan, reached the target in 19 overs, thanks to Yashasvi Jaiswal's top score of 45 runs and Powell's match-winning 6. But what was his score? We'll ask Paul Dennett about that. Virat Kohli has been in remarkable form in this season, amassing 741 runs with an impressive average of 61.75 with a strike rate of 154, including 1 century and 5 half-centuries over his IPL career. Kohli has played 252 runs, scoring a total of 8,004 runs in an average of 38.67 and a strike rate of 131. Well, some people argue that the strike rate may be a little too slow, but that's for purists to decide and fans to know. With 8 centuries and 55 half-centuries, he remains the top scorer in IPL history, followed by Punjab Kings Shikhar Dhawan with 6,769 runs in 222 matches, and Rohit Sharma, who has scored 6,600 runs in 256 matches. Well, today we have a very special guest in the studio, and someone who usually gets it wrong invariably quite accurately, Mr. Paul Dennett from Sydney. Paul, what went wrong with Glenn Maxwell last night?
Well, do we have to start the show with that, Sunil?
Welcome.
Look, I've defended Glenn Maxwell. No, it's not like I've needed to defend him. He's a fantastic cricketer. He's one of the best white ball players the world has ever seen. But last night was a really bad shot. And I could see it happening. I said to you, when I said, Maxwell's coming out, I said, make sure you watch it. Blink, you might miss it. I didn't expect it necessarily to be over in one ball. Sometimes, and I've said this before, I think he's so outrageously talented that maybe he goes out there with the intention of knocking it round for a couple. He sees it out of the bowler's hand and thinks, I can hit this for 6. And he needs to be able to restrain that impulse occasionally. And a situation like last night, if I was an RCB fan, all I would have wanted was that Glenn Maxwell faced the first 10, 15 balls. I would have been happy for Glenn Maxwell to be 0 or 15, as long as he gave himself that opportunity. When he swiped at it and basically meant that he needed to middle it in order to succeed, the percentages are just not in the favour of the batter in doing that. And it was a really disappointing way for his season to end. It's been a very bad season for him. He didn't get a bowl, which was a pity. I was hoping that maybe that would come. And he dropped a catch as well. So, look, the only good thing is hopefully he's got all his bad form out of the way and he can help Australia win the World Cup. If he does, I'm sure he'll be extraordinarily unpopular in India for doing so.
Well, you very bravely mentioned that it was not a batter's game, but we are very happy to have the bowling coach of the Zimbabwean cricket team, the man who's not only a data analyst and someone who loves to number crunch, but someone who's a great student of the game and reads it well, Stanley Chiozza. Stanley, welcome to the show, and just tell me, as a bowling coach, were you happy, delighted, excited to see the performance of both the sides? Because match was just shrinking and it was like a pendulum shifting from one place to another. Your views?
Yeah, sure. Good evening, everyone. One thing is certain, I did mention that the RCB batting lineup was in form, and in form it was. I mean, they had won 6 pretty much eliminator matches to get into this eliminator match. However, I did mention also in yesterday's show that it was important in terms of what conditions they get to play against the RCB.
That's correct.
Ahmedabad is well known for run scoring. And I was really skeptical of the fact that should Rajasthan Royals have played this game in Ahmedabad, or should they have gone to Guwahati, which is a little slower in nature and perhaps gives both the seamers and the spinners something to offer, which is Rajasthan Royals' strength, their bowling. But it lived up to expectations. Whoever is responsible for those conditions got them to perfection. Yes, the toss played a part. Sanju Samson elected to bowl first, and to delivery. Trent Bolt, he swung it. He was emphatic. He was miserly in his power play effort. And then those two spinners, world class, Chahal and Ravichandran Ashwin, they were brilliant in terms of taking pace off. And true to form, the surface also assisted. So the RCB batsmen just could not get going. They liked the ball coming through to them. They liked playing strokes, but this was not the surface that allowed that because it's just a little slower in nature, and it was a surface that got better and better. There just wasn't enough runs on the board for RCB.
Well, we've been through with some weather problem, pitch issues, hopefully not the fan issues, but there were other issues, travel, stay, whatever. But the good part is that we had some great emerging players coming from India as well as abroad. We're going to start off with Paul tonight. Paul, what do you think of someone from your country, the 19, 20-year-old McGurk?
Well, I can talk about Jake Fraser McGurk happily all day long. And it was, he has been kind of known for a little while. He came first to real prominence in Australia, probably just over a year ago when he got 100 off, I think it was 28 balls in a domestic one-day game, which broke the world record. And to see him now do that in the biggest league of the world, and my most cherished memory from the tournament actually was, I think I've told you before that in Australia the games start either at midnight or 1 in the morning,
yes,
which is tough. But the first games, the afternoon games of the doubleheader, start at a much better time, 8 o'clock. And for the first time ever, I watched a game with my dad. He'd never watched the IPL before. And the game we saw was Jake Fraser McGurk absolutely exploding. I think it was against Mumbai. And he just hit ball after ball after ball to the fence and over the fence.
Doesn't he come across as if someone is a golfer who just masquerading as a cricketer who's just about to tee off? Yeah,
he does. He just has this beautiful, pure shot. He would send the traditionalists crying with the lack of the MCC coaching manual being applied. But then again, he's not. There are players who are more outrageous than that. But I think that what was so great about him in this tournament was that it's one thing to crack a few sixes and get out, but it's another thing to look. What did he get? 330 runs for the tournament at an average of 37, at a strike rate of 234. When I was growing up, Jeff Marsh had a strike rate of about 55, and people said that's not too bad. His strike rate about 5 times that. So yeah, he was the shining light, along with Travis Head, from a batting point of view for Australia in this tournament. And the Australian selectors then didn't pick him for the World Cup, but that's another story.
Well, isn't he in the travelling entourage?
He is, and hopefully at some stage, I don't wish ill on anyone, of course, but if someone's maybe happens to pick up a slight injury and that's a pity, then maybe he can be squeezed in. That would be my great dream.
That'll be your great dream. What's your great dream about the emerging players, especially from the Indian lineup? Abhishek Sharma, Riyan Parag, Sai Sudarshan, Shashank Singh. Your views on that, Harshit Rana? Who has improved? Who has caught your attention?
The one person that's really caught my attention, especially with regards to where he bats down in the middle order, is Riyan Parag.
Okay.
I think he has been a stalwart for me for the Rajasthan Royals. And I'll tell you what, it's not easy to be batting in the middle period and score as much runs as he has at a strike rate. Because why? The field is spread. If the runs he had scored, or that he has scored this season, had been scored by somebody who bats in the top order, an opener perhaps, you could then say, okay, they have the benefit of the field set, just 2 fielders outside the circle. But when you're 4 to 5 fielders outside the circle and you score as much as 567 runs in the middle period of this IPL tournament, that is brilliant batting from Riyan Parag.
Well, absolutely. We are also joined by Tatinda Ziambe, who not long ago was in our studio and is now in Harare Sports Club. Tatinda, who's your favorite emerging player of the lot?
My favorite of the lot, I guess it'd probably be Jake Fraser, purely just because he just came out of nowhere from like a bolt of lightning, I suppose, in a sense. Those who followed the under 19 World Cup will know of his exploits, but I think for what he's managed to do in this season alone, I think that really made me just, I think that sort of perhaps differentiated himself. Add to the fact that he's basically an opener, being so explosive in the way that he does it, and his mentality purely just boundaries, nothing else in between. I think that for me is entertaining, and that's what made me think, or made me feel that he's the best emerging player.
Well, I hope your jet lag is subsided and you're not missing the Delhi heat. Well, go on, Tatinda.
Yeah, the jet lag is almost subsided. I think if I get another good night's sleep, it'll be okay. And we're getting into winter here, so it's actually it's a cool, balmy 22 degrees right now. So I'm sure it's much better than the.
Well, this is what the sledging is. We've heard the cricket sledging, but the weather sledging, for the first time, we are experiencing it, and it hurts. Well, moving on to our second topic for discussion today, it's on the review rule of LBW and the wide in IPL. Well, Paul Dinant, the man has various views very strong opinions about these two rules. Paul, just take us through the background to the fans and then put your point.
Well, firstly, with the reviews for the wides,
yes.
It's been a theme throughout the entire IPL. You can hear the commentators getting angrier and angrier when the reviews are taken. And some of them actually said how much they can't stand it. And I thought it would be an interesting point to discuss whether they should get rid of it, because I think they brought it in with the best intentions of saying no one's going to review for a wide at the risk of losing a review when you could maybe later on need to use it for a wicket, unless it's a match deciding moment. So maybe if it's the last ball of the match and it's called a wide, then you can review it, and then we can be happy that an umpiring mistake didn't ruin the match. But last night, Cameron Green, he came out to bat and reviewed a wide that wasn't given, almost the first ball he faced, which was A, not given as a wide, so he just squandered a review, but B, it exemplified the fact that you put these rules in place for one reason, the players are going to take them every last step of the way. And so we've had situations where in the final over of an innings, players have gone, well, we've got a couple of reviews to spare, let's review the wide, and the next ball that's not given, we'll review that, and then sometimes the final over takes 15 minutes. And I don't know what the answer is, because the minute you say, no, you can't review it anymore, let's just go back to the umpires, you'll get a situation where a game is decided by a wide. So maybe there needs to be some sort of rule that it's got to be only in the final over, like a bit like America has the 2-minute warning in NFL or something like that. But I just found it amusing throughout the tournament how angry, I can tell that Ravi Shastri and others are only speaking about 10% of just how frustrated it's making them. But what do you guys think? Well,
we are here to ask questions, and my point is, if the rule is there, why not follow it and use it to the best of your advantage? Well, moving on, that brings me to your point that you made, very interesting. What's wrong with commentators these days? They are so restricted in their discussion, and they're very thrifty with their comments. Do you think the world has changed since Bill Lawry and the others?
Yeah, well, it's that's a hot topic, Sunil.
Go on. You've got a live Twitter feed which ensures that we are in the news throughout. Come on.
No, to be fair to the commentators last night, that controversial LBW decision that was given not out against Dinesh Karthik. So he was given out LBW, he reviewed it, and it turned out to be given not out because the third umpire probably mistakenly thought that he actually hit the ball, whereas in actual fact he was hitting his pad.
When in doubt, go to the umpire and he gives the benefit to the batsman.
But I think what he did is he was too quick. We're always saying, come on, let's speed the game up. Sometimes someone needs to tap the third umpire on the shoulder and say, hey, this one, take your time because you really need to get this one right. And I said to you, oh, look, I bet the commentators, they won't criticise this decision. But they did, to be fair. I think sometimes in the past, in various tournaments, I think some of the commentators are...
Okay, let me ask you, way pointed. Mm-hmm. What is it that irks you the most about the commentators these days? And be honest.
Oh, what...
Just don't be a diplomatic UN ambassador.
What irks me most
is,
and I'm not naming any names.
Why? You're an Aussie, you can sledge.
Is when ex-players, and I don't think this applies to the current ones, but when ex-players get given money to commentate and clearly they don't actually like cricket.
Go on. Glenn McGrath, live on your Australian cricket telecast actually said that. Am I right? Wrong?
Yeah, I think he probably has. A lot of them say that they, because I think the thing is that you ask cricketers that are really, really good at it, they tend to find it a boring sport. One of the things I'd say is to a young kid who's potentially showing talent at cricket, do you like watching cricket? And if they say yes, I think, oh, there's not much of a future for you, I don't think. So I think that...
Okay, let me put you on the spot once more. Talk about the selector, the very well-known cricketer, Mark Waugh, he should have been watching a one-day game, or a first-class game. He was actually watching horse racing. Is this true or not?
Well, I think it's a bit of there's a bit of truth to it, yeah. I think that actually talking about watching horse racing, the day that Steve Waugh hit his famous last ball 100 and the entire crowd at the Sydney Cricket Ground rose to applaud him, guess who had left half an hour early?
Who?
Mark Waugh, to go to the Harold Park Trots. So he popped across the other side of the city to watch horse racing and missed his brother's famous last ball 100. So potentially there have been times, I think, in the commentary box where maybe Mark Waugh's interest has been more in the gallops than it has been on the cricket.
Well, that brings me to our friend in the studio. Well, what do you think of the way the analysis has been shunted and has been put down by some of the experts? Do you think it's a lazy armchair way of not looking at the stats and not referring to that? Stanley Chiozza, the coach of Zimbabwean team.
Well, there's many ways to use stats. Others use it as a coaching aid. Others use it as selection aid. So with regards to stats, there's a bigger picture every now and then. But at the end of the day, it comes down to how they interpret it. At this show, we like to use stats a lot because we like to put that evidence to show the fans and how things go about, especially when decisions are made. With regards to either selection, with regards to conditions, there is a trend, there is a pattern which these stats show, and that is why they are there. They're there to make decisions, and they're there to show a certain pattern as to why things do happen in the game of cricket.
Well, what do you go as a coach? What do you rely on the stats?
I'm big. I'm big on stats. If at all, I'm big on actually over analyzing because I like to leave nothing to chance. The more I have, the better. Some coaches don't like it. Some players don't like it. Some players prefer to watch just a little bit and obviously then going to a game. Other coaches, they feel, okay, perhaps too much information is dangerous. Others coaches feel, look, it's important to make sure that you have the information there, then not have it. But for me, I like to see all of it. Give it to me. Let me make a decision. Let me make the best decision based on the stats available.
Well, we are at the fag end of our show right now. Tatinda, we spoke about how the stoppages are not good for the viewers, the audience. You've been to Arun Jaitley Stadium to get a first-hand view of an IPL match. What is the experience you bring back home to Zimbabwe?
No, I think for me, perhaps the commercialization of it is perhaps sort of like what made the FA with a lot of this stuff as well. So I found it quite interesting that you would have so many breaks, sort of during the innings. And it's not like it was a bad thing. They'll look for things for you to do in the stadium whilst you're there, whether it's through songs or dancing competitions or things of that nature. So I found that to be quite interesting. Then in terms of the stoppages themselves, I will agree. Maybe this is just me. I've never played at the highest level, maybe like Stanley has, or I'm just a viewer. But sometimes I feel like trying to challenge like a why it's so early on and got so little reviews. I feel that one that's almost can be a waste for you as a player and for the team, especially depending on how early it's on it is. And then two, as you said, for the viewer, because look, I understand if you're going to review a wide, let's just say you are chasing a total, there's maybe 10 balls left and you are 20 runs short, fine, I grant you that. But when it's like you just started out, for example, maybe it's third over in your innings and you want to review a wide, I sometimes kind of just almost want to pull my hair out and say, okay, well, what are we doing this? Surely there's other things we want to do. But experience-wise, I'm going to take the great thing from Arun Jaitley in terms of the experience that you have in the stadium, the activities you get, and then in terms of the reviews, I think it's up to the discretion, and sometimes the discretion, I would like an explanation because it just doesn't make that much sense.
Paul, this is your very first visit in India. Your very first day in India saw you wearing the David Boone T-shirt and going to the Arun Jaitley Stadium. What memories do you have now that entire dust is settling of the IPL? It's one of the biggest crazy days of IPL. What was your personal experience?
Oh, I loved it. It was, above all, it was cricket, and people sometimes forget that. I think I said that in my answer the first day here, that it is still recognisably 11 players trying to get 2 players out, and That part of it was the same. It was very, very different when I saw the police escort coming with the Delhi Capitals bus coming by, and that I suppose I should have expected that, but that's very, very different to anything that I had ever expected before. Just the sheer volume of people is something that is really exciting to be amongst as well. So I think that the IPL is a tremendous experience, and I'd love to come to more games in the future, because I think it's up there with it's a bucket list experience in terms of any sporting event in the world, I think, now these days.
Well, that was very emotionally put. Let me put Glenn Maxwell's last 10 IPL innings. 11, 0, 3, 28, 0, 1, 0, 4, 16, 0. Are you still pensive?
It's a huge issue, and there are
Yes.
people who are saying now that he should be dropped from the Australian side. But he has done this in the past. He has had waves of success and failure. I'm still on his side, and I'm still backing him to be a success. But there comes a time when the leash does run out. For me, it's a long leash. It hasn't happened yet, but it'll be very interesting to see what franchises do in terms of the auction next year. I suppose it'll depend on what he does in the World Cup.
Stanley Chilter, you're the coach. If you were to get these scorecards for your top player, 11, 0, 3, 28, 0, 1, 0, 4, 16, 0, and these are the last 10 innings of Glenn Maxwell, would you count this for his World Cup playoffs in the side? Your views, very honest and brutal.
Well, for me, this is quite an interesting discussion about Glenn Maxwell. But I think the one thing that people are also forgetting about Glenn Maxwell, it's also in these very same conditions that he won Australia the World Cup. So just because it's a shortened format, it doesn't mean people have to make noise about it. The conditions will change. The T20 World Cup is being held in the Caribbean, different conditions altogether. He's a big player, okay? He's a man who's just won you a World Cup single-handedly. Players go through a bad phase. That does not mean it makes them a bad cricketer. One tournament does not make you a bad cricketer, right? At the end of the day, the coaches, the selectors, they have faith in Glenn Maxwell. And I think as a coach, you have to show faith in good players and allow them the fact that they can go through a patch, but it's what you do behind the scenes to try and make sure that this player comes back to the player that we know him to be. That's the key thing. What is done behind? Should he have carried on in the IPL? Should he not? Those are things that are to be discussed by the powers that be. But he's in the squad. We back him 100%. I would back Glenn Maxwell 100%. And I'm hoping that should things go well, he can score runs like he knows how to. If things don't go well, look, we've seen many a player going to big tournaments and not perform as expected.
Well, it's becoming a complicated game, the world of cricket, and especially the surround sound. Paul Dinette, we've seen players making a comeback, either getting into isolation, doing strange things to come back into the zone. Which is the strangest thing you've read? Because you read a lot of books. Which is the strangest thing you've read about a player who's gone back home, come back and makes it a big thing and gets his mind into the zone? Which is the strangest thing you've heard or read?
The strangest thing? I think probably the strangest thing was Bob Simpson for Australia, that his way of getting back into the zone was being out of international cricket for a decade.
You've got to give the context as well. And he makes a comeback against India.
Against India.
And just demolishes them.
Well,
Go on.
I think that his comeback was unexpected because it was World Series cricket and they needed to have someone from the establishment, an experienced player. So they brought him out of, not even state cricket, he was playing grade cricket. I think he averaged about 40 odd against India and then had to tour the West Indies, and it wasn't so easy at age 42 with the West Indies attack of the 1970s. I'll tell you the most successful one. I know
Yes.
this is not as interesting as the strangest, but the most successful is Steve Waugh. That he was a brilliant young player, but didn't really kick on. He didn't fill you with a great deal of confidence, and he looked like he was going to be one of these bright, exciting players who'd flare and then disappear. He kind of reinvented his game, became, as they say, mentally strong, very, very compartmentalise, being able to watch each ball and forget about the rest of it, and went from being a flighty, exciting player to then for the next 8 years probably the most reliable player in the world. So that's not the strangest one. It's probably the best one. The strangest one, I'll have to take that one under advisement and think about it for next show.
Absolutely. Stanley Chiozza, what would you advise the players who are making a comeback who are down on the mental side of it? They're not in the zone. We're talking about Glenn Maxwell as the example here, and how would you advise him to make a comeback?
Well, someone like a Glenn Maxwell, it's hard to give a player of that caliber advice because he's been there, done that. Okay?
Yes.
But I think it's just about creating the environment for a player like that, perhaps giving him a break off the game. I think that's probably one of the better ones. But in terms of advice, it's very difficult to give someone like a Glenn Maxwell, because at this level, there's not much coaching that happens at this level. Believe you me, this is man management. Okay, this is about formula. This is about a tactical. Where do you plot him? Where do you plot him? I know there was a plan to try and maybe bring him lower down the order. It still failed. So you see, here we go. Keep him where he is, but in an environment like a RCB, I think there's been some fantastic people there, the likes of Virat Kohli, who's been in form, great form. You've got a Faf du Plessis. If those guys, with the caliber of players that they are, cannot bring about a player like Glenn Maxwell back to form, trust me, it's very difficult to find anybody else who can. Are you the same
Stanley, who's a tough-talking, fast-speaking, aggressive coach, or have you just applied for UN?
No. This is still the same stand, but at the end of the day, like I said, here's a World Cup winner. He wanted playing that aggressive cricket. Because of one bad tournament does not make him a bad player.
Absolutely, but that bad tournament has got RCB. You can probably side with me, Paul Dinette. Do you think he was the reason for not getting RCB into the playoffs final?
Well, it didn't help. I think the other reason is the dew.
The dew, the pollution, the miles, the extra lavishness. We'll all talk about that in the next program. But for now, thank you for watching us. This has been a fantastic show of Cricit Predicta with my high-profile guest, Stanley Chiozza, the coach of the Zimbabwean team, and a very successful podcaster from Australia in our studio. Thank you very much.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.